Hello everyone, and welcome to my next deck profile. And this is, scroll up, Balthier's Monstrous Mardi Gras, and as you can probably tell, it's a Dancers deck. I love Dancers. I've always loved Dancers outside of FFTCG and inside it. Wait, I'm gonna rephrase that because it makes it sound like I like Dancers in real life. Not that I don't like Dancers in real life. I like the job Dancers in the Final Fantasy franchise because they generally have quite unique effects and I think they are cool. Anyway, yeah, so using the new Balthier from Opus 21 and the new Dancer from Opus 21, I think you can squeeze a little bit more life out of Dancers. Now, I've actually just kind of foregone a lot of the other dancers, so I don't have Andrea Rade, I don't have really any of the water dancers outside of Mayakov, and he can be played using Philo. He can also be played onto the field using Cecil and other things. I'll get into that a bit in a minute, but using the water dancers means that you actually get the backup dancer as well, the 2CP. You've got the 3CP dancer as well, but it's a tough sell putting those into the deck, to be perfectly honest with you. 3CP for a dancer, or for a backup, that does about 1,000 to your opponent's board. Obviously, you can utilize it with things like Pinello and Lisset if you really want to. But to be honest with you, I actually think this functions perfectly fine without that. So, let me just run through the cards. I'll go with the backups first, then the forwards, and then finally the monsters and summons. Actually, I'm going to do the backups, then the monsters, and the summons, and the forwards. So, backups, we've got Philo. It's your way to be able to generate water, and ultimately one of your ways of playing Mayakov. If you are going to play some of the other water dancers in the deck, this is probably still worthwhile putting in there because it's a water generator. Ranger, so you want to be able to play your dancers of 3CP back onto the field immediately. You pay 1, break Ranger, play this dancer, enters the field, you pay 1 wind, you then get to reactivate 3 characters. What more do I need to say? Viera, so when Viera enters the field, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 card among them, and put the other cards at the bottom of your deck. Just more consistency. There are 3 in the deck because it's worth it, to be perfectly honest with you, but it also pairs very nicely with Kites. So when Kites enters the field, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 wind card among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. If it is a category 12 character, activate Kites. So if you play Kites onto the field and you reveal a Viera, add it to your hand, Kites will activate. You can then immediately cast the Viera, and I think that's so much fun. That's like old school wind. It's not broken wind where you just play something, you activate everything, play something again, you activate everything, kill some stuff, you know. It's just a little bit of, oh, you did the thing. You get to activate 1 character and then make the most of it by playing the thing you just revealed. You know, I think that's really cool. But yeah, Viera is also a good card. Kites in this situation is also good as well. And then finally, Madam M. There are 3 of in the deck because it's an EX burst, top 4 cards of your deck, add 1 character among them. Literally impossible for it to not hit because you could still reveal 3 Mayakov. But you should reveal at least 1. Although, actually, I say that, it's wind character. So actually, no, it's very, very plausible that you could miss this. You could reveal 3 Mayakov and 1 wind summon, for example. And Kites is 1, reveal 3 cards, add 1 wind card. So at least you can give yourself the summons if you wanted to. But yeah, there aren't many backups, but most of them are consistency things. So you've got Kites, Madam M, Viera, all perfectly fine turn 1 cards to be able to go and get hopefully more backups, and then Ranger, Philo. I've got 3 Philo in there. There are a couple of Sky Pirates in the deck, so you can get the double attack off that effect as well if you wanted to. But it's also, you know, she is a Sky Pirate. She can be discarded for Balthier's effect to reactivate all characters as well. So I don't think that's bad, personally. Right, let's move on to the backups, monsters even. So first up we have Yagudo. So I actually did have 2 in the first iteration of this deck, but I don't think it's necessary, if I'm honest. So you can play Yagudo onto the field, set something to 4k. You can also break it, set something else to 4k. I mean, if you've got Pinello on the field, let's say you've cast, I don't know, a couple of things, play Yagudo on the field, break Yagudo, deal 2k to the board maybe by dulling this dancer, pass turn, deal 2k to the board through dancer, 2k to the board through Pinello, and then you get to kill stuff. But actually, I never really played it that often, and I often had enough dancers on the field anyway with Pinello to be able to set things to 4k. So I didn't ever really need to worry about setting things to 4k, so this card just kind of became a bit more redundant. Now it is nice because you can play Yagudo onto the field, and if you've got Balthier, you set something to 4k and you deal at 3k. You still need to be able to deal that 1 additional k through probably something like Pinello, but still, it's an instant kill. Well, almost an instant kill. But yeah, I'm on the fence about this card now. But I still like it, so I've kept it in there. Evray, it's Evray. What more is there to say? Atomos, similar sort of thing as well. I mean, these two cards are just really phenomenal, and what's really nice about them as well is that they just give you so much back. Now, obviously, with these cards, there aren't too many back abilities that you're really going to be utilizing that much outside of Ranger and Kites. Viera, maybe, if you're in a bit of a pinch. Kites being able to just break and activate two characters is really nice, but ultimately, getting the backups back is only really indicative of playing more backups. Playing more cards, even, not more backups. And then finally, Typhon is just a means of removal that isn't dealing damage, but isn't also breaking as well. You know, it just means put it back in the deck, deal with it later. Right, moving on to summons, 2 Chocobos, because you don't want your things to die, and whilst you've got Mayakov, which can protect your dancers through abilities, can't protect them from summons, so having something like Chocobo to just bounce the 4 that's going to die back to your hand, replay it later, not too shabby. Dryad, it's mono wind. You get to kill stuff very, very quickly with it. What more is there to say? And then Fat Chocobo, board wipe. Actually, you could probably lower the Fat Chocobo and Dryad counts down a little bit. To throw some other stuff in there as well. There was the Water Leviathan, which I actually considered. Reduce damage that forwards would receive, or make it so they can't be targeted by summons, things like that. You know, there are some really good ways to be able to protect your forwards and other means as well, but the theme of the deck was board wipe, so Dryad and Fat Chocobo felt like a natural inclusion. Right, let's move on to the 4 wards. So, Fran, we have the new Fran in there. I actually, when I built this deck, before I had all the cards, because I built it out in my pre-release kit, I put the old starter card Fran in here, so she gains +1 for each Sky Pirate you control, and the card named Balthier you control cannot be targeted by abilities. Which is funny because it's actually kind of similar to what Mayakov does to your dancers, and that was really, really nice. Now, obviously, this Fran, the card named Balthier cannot be chosen by opponent's abilities. Same sort of thing, but when Balthier enters the field, if Fran's in the break zone, you can pay 1 to then bring him onto the field, which is nice because you play Balthier, deal 3k something, Fran enters, deal 3k something else, hopefully kill something. So she has that nice ability to be able to recur herself, but she's really small and easy to kill. I'd rather have a Fran actually that sits there, it's a little harder to kill, who could also potentially attack as well if you wanted to. And, you know, she's a 3k, even if you're using Penelo to set things to 4k, Fran still can't get past. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. Right, Penelo. I did have 3 in the deck. I've actually brought it down to 2 for a, well, not an important reason, but for a reason, which I'll go over in a minute. But ultimately, there are enough dancers in the deck to set things to 3k. 4k. The amount of casts you have in the deck means that you can then potentially deal 4k to the board as well. If you're dulling lots of dancers, that's nice. But this deck isn't actually a cast count deck. There are lots of ways to be able to cast lots of things in a turn, but realistically you don't actually want to be bouncing much back to your hand, recasting things. You just want to be killing stuff and then having forwards that are really hard to get rid of. And so Penelo's ability to be able to deal damage to the board at the end of the turn is nice, can finish a few things off, but it's not essential, so I've actually lowered her down to a 2. Then we've got this dancer. Now, I've never put this dancer in any dancer deck that I've ever built, ever. However, in a mono lightning, Jesus. In a mono wind dancer deck, I think it starts to become a lot more viable because Dull, deal 1000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls. If you control 7 or more wind characters, deal 4000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls. Now, you can easily reactivate this card multiple times using this deck. So, Dull her, deal 4k to your opponent's board, reactivate her, deal 4k, reactivate her, deal 4k. You know, it's very, very easy to be able to start killing stuff. And being able to dull this dancer to deal 4k to the board, and then utilizing Penelo to dull some other dancers to, you know, set them to 4k, is just really useful. So, actually, I really like this dancer, and being able to deal 4k, probably 8k to something. I mean, it could even be a case of play this dancer onto the field, make the payment to reactivate 3 characters, could have, you know, one of these dancers, maybe even 2, but dull it in response, deal 4k to your opponent's board, reactivate it, dull it again, pass turn, with Penelo on the field, you then have dealt 9k to your opponent's board. So actually, you're starting to get into the region of being able to deal 9, 10, 8, 11... Why did I go backwards? 9, 10, 8? But yeah, you can start dealing quite a bit of damage to your opponent's board with this card. So much so that I actually have it equal to this dancer as well. Again, at the end of your turn, if dancer is dull, deal 2000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls. You can dull it through Penello's effect, you can dull it through its own effect, or you can dull it through the Opus 17 Dancer's effect as well. It damage 3. It's really nice, but dealing 2k to your opponent's board is... it pairs nicely with Penello. If you can dull a couple of these Dancers using Penello's effect, you've set 2 things to 4k, you'll then do 4k to the opponent's board. He killed some stuff. It's really nice. But ultimately, I actually really like this card because you can buff all your forwards by 1. If you've got this Dancer, you can buff one of your Dancers by 1k if you want to, but actually just paying the additional 1 and using Dancer, and this is where utilising things like Atomos and Evray could actually become useful as well. So yeah, the ability to buff your entire board as well is very useful because your opponent can't target your forwards with summons or abilities when you have Mayakov in the field. So they might start looking at, you know, board wipes through damage or, you know, other means of getting rid of your forwards. So if by buffing all your forwards you can save them, maybe this card is worth it. This Dancer, integral to the deck because enters the field, pay 1 wind, you then get to activate 3 characters. It can be the 3 backups you dulled to be able to play this Dancer, or it could be, probably, 3 other Dancers to be able to then deal damage to your opponent's board, set things to 4k, you know, whatever takes your fancy. Ultimately, it's just really, really useful. Can be played back off of Ranger as well, and also has a nice passive effect to be able to buff the forwards as well in case they might die, have to block, want to attack, and might get blocked. You know, very versatile card, very, very useful. Matoya comes onto the field, sets something to 4k, pay 3, put her into the break zone, deal 4k to all your opponent's board. So it could even be a case with this, this Dancer. Deal 4k, reactivate, deal 4k, put Matoya into the break zone, deal 4k. You've nailed out 12k to your opponent's board. That's really, really good. So, yeah, being able to set stuff to 4k and then be able to deal 4k to the whole board. That's where Yugudo is actually quite nice because you already set it to 4k. Matoya enters, set something to 4k. Penello, dull, set something else to 4k. Put Matoya into the break zone, kill 3 things. You know, it's very, very versatile, very useful card. I often found myself discarding this card a lot, and you don't have means of recursion, unfortunately, for it. But still, there are 3 in the deck. When you need it, it's very important. Set at 4k, just get rid of the board. Mayakov, again, essential card. Making it so that your Dancers cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities is very useful. Now, this card actually, despite it obviously being in water, works nicely in the water version of this deck because it protects your Dancers, your Dancer backups as well. You know, it's all Dancers are protected from abilities. So it means that if you're up against Ice, for example, your opponent can't dull and freeze out your Dancer backups if you've got Mayakov through their abilities. So it means that you are protected in some way and you can still use their effects. Mayakov obviously can play any of these Dancers onto the field. You know, there are a total of, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unique names Dancers. I mean, there's, what, probably 12 Dancers that you can play onto the field, so chances are it's going to be played. What I also really like about this is you can play Cecil into Mayakov into a Dancer if you need to. If for some reason you haven't been able to get your Philo down, there are other means of cheating him onto the field as well. Obviously, just bear in mind that when he enters the field, he will not trigger Balthier because it's when Balthier or a wind character enters the field. But yeah, protecting Dancers, no brainer. This Dancer from Opus 21 is, again, really, really good. If you have any Dancer on the field, it becomes a 2 CP forward. That activates 2 characters. Again, activating 2 characters is so good because so many of the Dancers have effects that you want to dull, reactivate, dull it again. You know, buff all your forwards, set something to 4k, deal 4k to your opponent's board, it doesn't matter. Being able to activate, dull, use effect, activate, dull, use effect is so good. And this is one of the reasons I love Dancer so much, is because it's kind of like the old school traditional win that I talked about earlier, where you're not just doing stupid things and having a really uninteractive game with your opponent, you're actually doing things to their board as well as, you know, reactivating your own stuff at the same time. Balthier enters the field, or win character enters the field, deal 3k stuff. That on top of, you know, this dude dealing damage, this dude dealing damage, Penello dealing damage, who knows what else, setting things to 4k, you know, it's just really easy to kill stuff. But ultimately, discard a Sky Pirate, you get to reactivate all your characters. That is silly. Just yet, there are so many good dull effects within the Dancers anyway. Being able to reactivate all your characters, which includes, you know, Typhon, Atomos as well, if you want to attack with those guys. It's just so good. Just so good. And then finally, Cecil. You've got Mayakov, which obviously protects your Dancers from abilities. But Cecil is just that added level of protection as well. It means your opponent, if they are going to target them summons, they have to pay the 2 to be able to actually just even use anything. And then you might end up just chocoboing it back to your hand regardless, or some other summons. But yeah, that's Balthier's Monstrous Mardi Gras. There are loads of different ways you can take this. You could probably actually weirdly reduce some of the dancers and put some other generic good win cards in the deck. You could even maybe put Warrior Light in the deck. You've got the Cecil to be able to play him into the field. There's probably some other ways of cheating him in. Onion Knight, I think. But ultimately, I just wanted to go with forwards that are kind of hard to get rid of, because surprisingly, your opponents will rely a lot on abilities because they have to have the summons. Summons are a finite resource, unless they can recur them back to the hand and keep casting them, or they just have stupid amounts of cards, or stupid amounts of summons in the deck, which they can just keep on casting if they're running like a Braska deck, for example. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun to have lots of forwards that are really hard to get rid of. And similarly, if you do run some of the dancer backups, having those that can't be targeted are also fun as well. But let me know how you guys would change this deck. What would you put in it? What would you change? What would you take out? If I was going to reformat this deck, I'd put more dancers in. Thanks guys, see you in the next video.